If you look at 1000 videos on the TikTok and even on YouTube, maybe more than 500 you will find against immigration and asylum seeker. And it is widely believed that immigration is the most important issue of British society in particular and Europe in general. So one needs to think that why this has become an important issue. One of the factors contributing to it is the lack of awareness, especially about history. For instance, uh, Adam Smith had said that man has a natural sense of empathy. He sympathizes with the people who have been victim of something, who have been oppressed, who have been suppressed, who were subjugated, um, or who were subjected to violence. So, if the British students and British universities and schools had taught the colonial suppression and subjugation, the colonial atrocities that were perpetrated by the British ruling elite, they would perhaps have a sense of sympathy, or majority still has a sense of sympathy for asylum seekers and immigrants. But those who hate these people, they would also have had a sense of sympathy with them. It doesn't mean that immigrants do not commit any mistake. It doesn't mean that there are elements within immigrant community who talk about hegemony, who try to spit venom against secularism, who do not recognize secular and democratic culture of British society. I'm not exonerating immigrants either. Of course, there are sections of radicals, especially Islamists, who want to dominate British society, who openly say that they want to impose Sharia, taking jizya or a special tax from the British people. That I can understand naturally drives an ordinary British nut. And that should not be acceptable. And I personally feel that the British government or uh, this society has to draw clear line. Anybody opposing secularism, um, targeting democratic systems, saying that they will impose a certain brand of any religion, they should be encouraged to go to Afghanistan, because this is where they belong to. If they really are interested in Sharia, so it's better for them, and the imposition of Sharia, they should go to those countries. So, but uh, coming back to like historical points, like British ruling elite, they exploited colonies. More than 19, or some people say 22 countries were colonized by the UK in the Africa only. India was under their control. Kenya was there under their control. Rather, one third um, population of the world maybe was under their control. A significant portion of world's population was under their control. And then indigenous writers in those countries, for instance, Indian nationalists argue that the British ruling elite systematically destroyed the Indian economy. And when the British arrived, India would contribute around 23% to global GDP. And when they left, it was hardly 5% or less than 5%. Similarly, there are authors like Shashi Tharoor and others who believe that because of the British policy, more than 35 million people lost their lives in Bihar, Bengal, Odisha's famines. Maybe many do not understand it in the UK, but at least the people from Ireland might understand it, because such policies also led to a terrible famine in the island, forcing more than 1 million, or forcing millions of people to migrate, and leading to the decimation of more than 1 million Irish people. It's interesting that Tommy Robinson doesn't know about this, and he doesn't know the way British ruling elite oppressed Irish people despite having an Irish background. So there are some other authors whose claim might be exaggerated, but they said that British policies led to the killings of more than 100 million people in India alone. There are other authors who talk about oppression in Kenya, that the sledgehammer tactics or the coercive apparatus of the state that the British colonial empire employed to crush rebellion or freedom movements, what indigenous people call during anti-colonial movement in Kenya and other parts of the world. So, and the British ruling elite was not only exploiting poor people of the colonies. At the time when wealth from peripheries was being extracted and was being brought to London or metropolitan, there were, like phenomenon of child labor. Charles Dickens was writing about that. Many other writers were writing about that. There were women, even pregnant women, would have to work for longer hours. Kids as old as 12 years or 13 years would have to work for 9 or 10 hours. There are reports of the British Parliament as well. There are reports of inspectors, British inspector visiting, labor inspector visiting factory and coming up with reports of horror. And there was no immigrant at that time. It was the white British capitalists exploiting white British working class, and they were also exploiting poor people in the colonies. So if this had been taught in schools, and of course the people, especially those people who hate immigrants now, they would have a sense of sympathy for them, because most of the immigrants in this country are from British colonies. I mean, from Caribbean, from India, from Pakistan, Bangladesh. In modern time, of course, people did join from Afghanistan, Syria, and other parts of the world as well. But primarily, if you see, a large chunk came from there. Then again, the contribution of immigrant is not taught in an effective way. For instance, how many those uh, who have unleashed a sort of a malicious campaign against immigrants and asylum seekers know that more than 4 million Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Nepalese, or Gurkhas from Nepal, they sacrificed their lives during first and second world. More than 4 billion people, can you imagine? And then millions of people worked day and night during first and second world war in India and other parts of the world to ensure smooth supply to the British army that was fighting. Then more than 250,000 also took part from West Africa, and I think more than 150,000 from East Africa. So they also, so had they not been there, the country might have been captured by Hitler, and then what would have happened. And then in the aftermath of World War II, during the reconstruction program, NHS was greatly helped by the immigrants coming from Caribbean countries and laborers coming from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and other parts. They greatly helped during the reconstruction process. So if this is all taught, then of course naturally GB News would not tell you. Naturally, these TikTokers will not tell you. Naturally, Telegraph and other newspaper will not tell you about this all contribution. So now the world is open. You can Google and do your own research. The reason as to why you see Sikh here, many Muslim Pakistanis here, many Indians here. So one of the wave, came during the First World War. Of course, there was also a slow migration of the people, but in large number. Why? Because they were the soldiers, they were the veterans. Some of them adopted the UK as their country. Then during Second World War, same thing happened, and then of course because of the reconstruction. So they do not discuss that. Then these like Telegraph, right wing media, and GB News and other do not discuss class issue. For instance, very simple, that the British society, while immigration is a problem, it's not the most important problem. The British government might hardly be spending £2 billion over immigrant and immigration and asylum related things. And they are spending more than $50 billion on tridents, which many politicians believe should be scrapped. Defense and trident and all that. So defense budget, they think it should be drastically reduced because Soviet Union is not there any longer. The UK doesn't face the type of threat that it used to face during the Cold Wars. So a substantial chunk of that budget could be diverted towards hospitals, towards libraries, towards a school, towards road, towards infrastructure and housing. Another factor, that this right-wing media blames everything on immigrants. That's not the case. For instance, take the example of housing. 30% of England's land mass belongs to aristocrat, the old aristocrat and rich people. 18% by corporations and 17% by banks. No right wing media will ever talk about it. And because of this, housing prices are going up, land prices are going up because of some greedy capitalists. In most of the cases, these are owned by the white British, rich people. In the same way, one British company is holding more than 11,000 rental properties, and more than 5,000 or 4,000 rental properties are owned by just one bank only. This is something that is fueling, housing crisis. Nobody would talk about. In the same way, if you look at most of these right wingers, far right, Margaret Thatcher is their icon, right? She was the one who threw support behind Afghan militants, Afghan Mujahideen. She was the one who opened up market with the Chinese good flooding British market. And she was the one who weakened trade unions because she wanted to just strengthen her position politically. And she was the one, because of her policy, of course she supported Afghan jihad. So drugs also made their way into British market on a massive scale. Of course there would have been drugs before that, but these, and today Islamist that we have, uh, you know uh, in Western countries, and especially in the UK, they are the gift of Afghan jihad. They are the gift of the policies that the British government adopted during the crisis in Yugoslavia. The West threw its support behind in one way or another way. I'm not saying outright support, but they were they did in reality. They did not directly support, uh, but they did have sympathy for Chechen, fighting Russia. So, and even you could see in Syria what happened because they were fighting against dictator Bashar al Assad. And even yesterday's terrorist Ahmad Shara Jolani is being greeted now by the West. He was the founder of one of the founders of Al Qaeda in Syria. He was closely allied with terrorist Abu Musab Zarqawi. He was the head of Al Nusra Front. So he was a terrorist. He is still terrorist according to some countries. But this terrorist is being greeted, whose government reportedly has jeopardized the lives of minorities there. So these right wingers do not discuss these horrendous policies, these policies that led to this phenomenon. And it is also very interesting that the case of British white working class is being fought by the rich guys. You can see that Goodwin, Nigel, Frage, they all. Now tell me, that is class issue important in British society or not? For instance, you can see Eton College charging around maybe 47,000 pound fee for a student. Rishi Sonak, who is Hindu, his kids could go there. Lord Ali, who is Muslim, his kids could go there. David Cameron, who may be Christian, his kids could go there. Smith's family, who is Jewish, could go there. But somebody, a white working class family, living in close proximity of Eton, or maybe 10 or 20 kilometer or 50 kilometer away, cannot even imagine of entering Eton either. They will have to get a scholarship, or they will have to pay fee. Now the fee may have been risen to 67,000 because of VAT. In the same way, suppose if 12 if hourly wage is 13 pound, tomorrow some crazy government comes into power raising it to, let's say, 40 pound. Now what would be the reaction of Lord Ali, who is Muslim capitalist, Sir Anwar Pervez, who is Muslim capitalist, Lakshmi Mittal and Hinduja brothers, who are Hindu capitalists, Smith family, that may be, Jewish, David Cameron and other rich people's family? What would be their reaction? And what would be the reaction of white working class, Irish working class, Scots working in factories or in the service sector, workers coming from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and other countries? So these are the factors that are fueling these far right activists or right wingers. They do not talk about these important issues. They do not talk about who is holding the largest chunk and the largest number of rental properties in this country. They do not highlight these class issues. Class is the real issue. That doesn't mean that immigration is not an issue. It is one of the issues, but it is not the issue. So it is important that we ponder over these factors. And at the end of the day, some might argue it's not the case of only immigration. For instance, in 19th century, immigration was zero in the UK, almost zero, or there might be insignificant. Were there not white capitalists exploiting white working class? Were there not were there not phenomena of child labor? Were kids not working for 8 and 9 hours? Who was exploiting them? Was there any immigrant who was exploiting them? No, it was white capitalists exploiting white working class. So this is just an excuse to spread hatred and to uh, sow the seeds of disharmony within communities. In Germany, it started with maybe Roma people, with communists, with others, and then Hitler extended this hatred to all non-Aryans. So hatred is like a virus. It is bound to spread. That's why we have to do research, we have to read history, we have to understand, and we need to have class consciousness.